Welcome to the Doctors of Change, the podcast for practitioners, doctors, and healers who refuse to quit. This is where we honor the men and women who have walked through burnout, trauma, breakdowns, and breakthroughs, came out stronger on the other side. These are for the doctors who realized the greatest medicine they could ever practice was healing themselves first. Their stories, their lessons, scars, and victories will change you, inspire you, and wake up the leader within you. This is a new era of medicine, and the revolution starts here. Welcome to the Doctors of Change. Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Doctors of Change. I am so excited to share our next guest, Angelica Gordon. She's been on the path of medicine since early 2000s and has experienced all sorts of different traditions, tribes, and has gone from being an ayahuasca provider to now running a dieta space to teach people of how to have a greater relationships with themselves, the plants, and spirits of this medicine. So, Angelica, thank you for your time and energy. We're going to dive down some questions. People have heard of dieta. What is dieta? All of these different things we're going to cover today. But if you've been lost, you're looking, you've seen the recent announcements of legislation change, these are conversations to now begin to take in, learn from different perspectives, as have I, as well as Angelica, learn from different carriers of these medicines. And super excited to have her share her wisdom, her knowledge, and her story. So take us back. I know you're in Peru now. We'll get to what you do there at the end, but why'd you end up in Peru in the first place, Angelica?
Right. So in 2012, I was having an experience with a lot of pain in my body at the age of 22, diagnosed as fibromyalgia. And I was just in one of those points of life, pretty early, where it just felt like I hit rock bottom. I was in extreme pain every day. I was emotionally and psychologically disturbed and unstable. I was struggling financially. I was struggling with community and my family. And I just had this call to come to Peru. So in my case, I got a one-way ticket to Peru with zero plan and just knew that something in my life had to change. And I followed the call.
So people say that. They've got the call, and today's show isn't about any specific plant, but it is important that this medicine is not meant to be pushed. There's an invitation, a call, a relationship. A lot of things in the Western society are push, force, control, authority. I believe many of us that have been in the plant space is different. It's an invitation, a curiosity, a call. I rarely ever recommend somebody to do this unless they're seeking out and ask questions or asking what you do. Other than now, because it's a conversation, I do believe it is going to integrate into healthcare fully. It's done so with ketamine. It's happening with psilocybin, iboga, even in recent legislation. So all of these possibilities exist out there. And Angelica, with ayahuasca, you've heard that before. Did she call you or feel the call? What was it that felt called? Was you knew you weren't just finding answers in the Western society? What drew you down there? And I'm always curious that for myself. I just knew I was always curious about things that I didn't know. And I'd had other experiences with other medicine, and I saw there was more than meets the eye. And my curiosity and ultimately, struggles brought me to the medicine when medicine could no longer support what wasn't working.
And that's exactly what it was for me. I had been to various psychotherapists and tried various medications for anxiety, for depression, for insomnia, and it just felt like nothing was really working. Like it was a way of trying to control symptoms that involved having to switch medications many times, and it just felt like it wasn't really going anywhere in a permanent way. And so I came to Peru knowing absolutely nothing about ayahuasca. I didn't even necessarily intend to explore that. It was more being here physically and beginning to hear about it a lot from the people in the international community here and talking about depression and anxiety. And so that was my initial draw. I was very skeptical at first.
Okay, so you learned about it when you were there. How long till you experience your first, somebody that says, go try this, or a community that's there, and what did you notice early in your early experiences?
So it was 3 months between landing here and sitting in my first ceremony. And that first experience just completely blew me away. I had absolutely no idea what I was in for. There were many later ceremonies that were more grounded, for lack of better words, but that first experience was very spiritual, very multidimensional, and it really opened me up to, a world and a perspective that I didn't know existed, and I just instantly wanted to immerse more in that and learn more about it.
So I just want to piggyback on a word that you said right there, is open you up. If you're new to this show and learning about this, what I've come to find is, I used to hear ayahuasca told me to do this, so and so told me to do this. And to me, I was looking for a lot of solutions outside along the way, guides, teachers, coaches, all along the way. But what happened pretty early into, which was revealed with me, is the medicines, whether it was ayahuasca or different ones, are opening the heart, from whether it's a subtle soft beat or opening a channel, a portal. And that's where, even when I was early guided, the guide would say, open your heart. I'm like, what does that even mean? My heart is open. I love people. I like what I do. I love my family. So it's just like, what I revealed is it does actually open, and it's a gateway, a channel, a portal, as you say, to information that under the use of these substances, a clear connection of information, understanding, knowing, feeling, releases begins to happen. It can be multidimensional, can be pure feelings, can be visualizations, but something more, which I would call it awareness, knowing, begins to occur in these. And it took me a while to understand that. I'm lucky I had translators' guides. Can you tell me a little bit about, you had an amazing experience, some lighter ones. When did you begin to learn to interpret or connect with what, obviously you were feeling something and knowing there was something, but learning the plants of the intelligence of it? Tell me a little bit about your journey from you're seeing this to it's obviously made some difference, and now you're on the path.
I've talked to a lot of people about their introduction to ayahuasca, and it just, I'm not arrogant, but it seems like my connection, in the sense that you're talking about, opened really fast. I would say in the second ceremony, I began to develop what I would call a line of communication with ayahuasca. And when I began working with plant dietas, so this would have been a few years later, I learned that this skill, so to speak, of learning to open this communication channel with a plant spirit, because they don't speak in words, and they speak telepathically. And so once I learned that with ayahuasca, I discovered that can be applied to basically any plant, whether it is psychoactive or not. And that's kind of the basis of Amazonian plant shamanism in a nutshell, is it is utilizing this same line of communication to communicate with whatever plant is being consumed in a dieta.
So for those that are brand new to this world, dieta, what is it? How is it different than ayahuasca? Can you diet ayahuasca? Can you diet multiple plants? What does that look like? So pretend that our audience has never heard of them. What would you do to describe a dieta? Because I've had friends that said, oh, I did a dieta as they went down to their ceremony. I was like, oh, you prepared food. What did you diet? And they were confused. So let's go to Dieta 101.
Yes. So I think a common misconception comes in that the term dieta in Spanish can refer to a specific food diet, what you are consuming as far as food, and it can refer to the modality of dieta. And so what we're talking about here is the modality. And so the modality of dieta does include a very restricted food diet. So in most traditions, I come mostly from a Shipibo background, so I'll describe it in that context. So when you are in a plant dieta, your diet typically takes out all salt, all seasoning, all spices, oils, meat. And so you're basically just eating hard-boiled eggs, plain boiled grains, plain vegetables, non-citrus fruits. And so this part of the food restriction serves a few purposes of, A, helping to cleanse the physical body, and B, on a more energetic level, when it's a way of limiting stimulus. And so, for example, citrus is a very stimulating flavor. Hot peppers are very stimulating. And so the food diet is aimed to remove that layer of stimulus. So that is one part of what makes dieta a dieta. Another part is isolation. And so if you are doing a plant dieta in the jungle, typically you are living in what they call a tambo, which is like a little one-room hut that you have to yourself. You're not allowed to talk to the other participants. You aren't allowed to use your phone. And so that is another way of removing stimulation. And so the idea with this is that by removing all forms of external stimulation, connection with the plant and with your internal landscape becomes much louder than it usually would be, because there are not these external noises in all senses of the word that are influencing your perception and your state of being.
That's beautiful. So great explanation from my angle is there's nothing quite like it when you're in your own home. Even the Wi-Fi is going, the fan, all the different stimuli. I did my first dieta in the Sacred Valley, but we're still in and around that stuff. You can hear the neighbors, it's still, powerful, super powerful stimulus, no talking, super, bland seasonings, foods, a little chapo, a little, raw banana. And that was one experience, but we still had a nice accommodation, stuff that made the nervous system feel comfortable. And then, yes, year two, the tambo in the jungle, and no warm water, no phones, no isolation, peer, like, you're going to come up. We went with a few in our party, and, one went home early at the party before us, struggling. 11 days solo with no distractions but yourself and going inwards is quite the process. Day 8 is when stuff finally stirred up enough for me to get the messages, the learnings, the understanding. It's there, but it's meant to, again, build intentionality, learn, create a relationship, to understand. That's what I see it as. It was the hardest thing, but the most transformative thing that I've ever done on the second one. I could finally hear. Everything was clear. And again, this work, the stuff that comes up, that's not the stuff to fear. At my first few journeys, that's scared. That's where it's like, ooh, yes, that's what I'm here for. This is what the body or the soul wanted to address, and it's bring it to it. But instead of just hit me loudly, which the body usually is squeaking, or signs, just like we all get afterwards, how do you hear subtly on a day-to-day basis in a relational and intentional standpoint? And my gifts started to change there. I can hold presence more. I can sit still far more, versus how many people can actually sit still in meditation, or they say, oh, I can't do that. X that. So how do we sit still? How do we calm the system? How do we learn and see what's present and available? And I can't think of a better thing. Now, let's talk a little bit deeper. Each one of them you mentioned earlier, whether it's cacao or tobacco or ayahuasca itself. Tell me a little bit about, as somebody like yourself that has dieted many plants, the differences, why this plant versus that, or do they each have a proprietary, a gift, a teaching quality that supports the individual that they're
Right,
working?
that's a beautiful question. And so what I learned through apprenticeship with the Shipibo is that the traditional way of approaching dieta is that before the maestro, the shaman, chooses a plant for the person to diet, they have an ayahuasca ceremony that acts as a diagnostic. And so in this initial ayahuasca ceremony, the facilitator is looking at all aspects of what is happening in that person, and they choose a plant based on that. And so there are well over 100 plants that can be used in a dieta context, and each of them have very unique personalities, you could say, almost like people. Each of them hold very unique wisdom and themes that they generally teach on. There are many that have physical medicinal qualities. And so the choice of plant is really this process of diagnosis.
Yeah. So what I've learned through that process is just like one sports blood, oxygen, one may open the heart a little bit more, like we talked a little bit earlier, is one of those steps. One might build strength and resilience. Each have their different process. And again, somebody like Angelica or the Maestro determining what may be best is kind of like no different in people listening to the peptide space. Yeah, you can go get a peptide and they could benefit you, and you can learn to be guided and know is that the right order and the right steps, and see so much more and have a personalized experience. The dietas The most transformational experiences of my life because of that stillness, that quiet, that reset, that relationship is very rarely can somebody set aside that amount of time to go inward and be with
Likewise.
themselves that long. I used to have a fear around that. I used to be scared of it. It was hard to sit still. And now I crave it. I love it. I just got back from Chile on a 10-day reset and super powerful. I just did a different plant, Wachuma, and different qualities, different feelings, different sensations, different intensity than the other ones. They're all just a little bit different. And I'm curious, and I'm on the path with somebody, did your journey look like? And I know you had some medical conditions that you mentioned. How fast were things cleaning up because you were in a rough spot and searching for answers?
So I would say, in all honesty, my first year working with ayahuasca, I immersed quite deeply. I would say there were times in that year where I was going to ceremony twice a week. So it was intensive for me. And I'm not going to lie, it was extremely difficult. But I would say about 3 months in, I began to notice a huge difference in my overall day-to-day state of being. I was sleeping better. I was experiencing much less severe depression and anxiety. And so I knew at that moment that real changes were happening. And that's what encouraged me to keep going. The fibromyalgia symptoms I was experiencing completely cleared up about 6 months in. And yeah, I didn't have another medical issue that I treated with plants until, yeah, with this tumor last January.
And when you're on the plants, were you able to see an outcome with that was persistent? How did you navigate which plant to support the tumor would best support? Was it an inner knowing at this point? Was it a maestro? What do you feel did? And did one dieta take you through, or was the whole infrastructure of how you prepare and post dieta as well?
Right. So with the teratoma in particular, I had been through apprenticeship for 10 years when I got that diagnosis, and I had been holding this space for others for several years. So in my case, I had the knowledge and the understanding of many plants where I could, I guess you could say, put a protocol together myself. And so for this particular dieta, it was 13 months. It was completely self-led. I was working with a mixture of 5 Amazonian trees and a mixture of 5 Amazonian Western plants. And so it wasn't that I was drinking every plant every day of the dieta, but it was more, phases of a couple months or a couple weeks where I was focusing on 1 or 2 plants in particular. And it was more of an intuitively guided process. But I would say for somebody listening to this, yeah, it's really important that in the beginning of work like this, you have somebody that has a really deep understanding of both your condition and the plants that you are working with, because it's kind of an art of properly combining them and understanding both the energetic and physical properties to be synergistic, to be compatible, to produce the result that you're looking for, because it's not just, a random assortment. It's a very specifically put together protocol.
Yeah, amazing. So there's a lot of curiosity I'm sure people have over questions of dieta. Why do you think dieta is overlooked compared to the ceremonies themselves? Why people maybe rush to South America for those breakthrough experiences more than potentially dietas?
I think that's a really amazing question and something I've been talking about really in the community in general. I write a lot in, plant medicine community groups on Facebook, partly about that subject. And I think part of it is just that ayahuasca has become really well known as a psychedelic, and it's become very commercial. And so I think that is the main reason why there is such a focus on the ayahuasca boom, I guess you could call it. So what I learned in that as I got deeper into this tradition of dieta is that ayahuasca in a traditional sense is a very small part of a much larger system of plant medicine. And this is a system that has existed in the indigenous tribes for thousands of years. And so the system utilizes ayahuasca, but it's not only ayahuasca.
The whole pharmacy, half of
Yeah,
the, or if
exactly.
not more of the pharmaceuticals are from the Amazonian. Food is medicine. You've heard the analogy. So are these plants. So I mean,
And so
literally is. So
the system underlying ayahuasca, I guess you could say, is very broad and very complex and actually very scientific in a way. So ayahuasca is more the psychoactive element of that system and of a dieta, and the actual plants being dieted are more of the glue and the healing. Does that make sense?
it does. My question kind of leads to like, okay, they're traditionally often done in tandem, just like you said. The maestro selects the dieta, and the dietas I've had, they've been paired together. The ayahuasca at night, and then the plant, the whole tradition. And there's kind of one question that leads me up to it is, from your perspective, there's a lot of restriction, a lot of blandness, a lot of isolation, a lot of this, and people sometimes struggle with that. But can you see from your experience, and even Westerners coming in, the isolation, being quiet, being still, like, what is the purpose? What does it bring up? Because I know a lot of people can wrap their head around, like, if I eat well and I'm eating clean and no chemicals, products, my body's going to naturally regenerate. But what about that work, the soul, the healing, the spirit, the nervous system of that level of isolation / restrictions / quiet space?
Right. So I think for most people that are first coming into this and into the practice of silence and isolation, it's new. It's new for most of us. And I find the main purpose that it serves is, cutting out all forms of external feedback that are coming into the system and the mind. And so when you are in isolation and you are in silence for an extended period of time, the only stimulation is internal. So your subconscious thoughts and belief patterns begin to present themselves and speak really loudly. Emotions that you have been suppressing and haven't been able to feel and process are able to surface, and your connection to your spirit, if you will, becomes much more clear, because that is something that can only be accessed internally without stimulation influencing it.
Yeah, I love that. Is, the analogy that I've heard and kind of use is just like, could you go to church and have an expanded experience? Could you have it with your own home and everything, doing breath work? The answer is yes. Can you do it in meditation? Yes. But when you're in nature with isolation, without all those products, chemicals, outside interference, like you said, it's like you're straight on 10G, not even 5G. It's just like you're in tune with, nature, your being, your soul, your spirit. And I've never quite experienced that amount of, especially in the jungle, Sacred Valley, and some of the other places still have that, but straight deep in there, like, man, like, that's where, like you said, the stuff comes up, the shadow. And what I would like to ask you is, like, you look like a pretty kind in general and sweet and sensitive young woman that packs up her life and goes to Peru. This is scary stuff. I know people why they don't do these, even though is numberly fear and misnomers and scares, like scared of the unknown, scared of like, do I got the right guide, scared of the medicine. I've been scared of the medicine at different points until I better learned, or it was exposed to it. So like, what would you tell somebody of what comes up in these stuff? Like, how do they get over it, the good outcomes? And I know you mentioned, like, contraindications, not everybody, if they're on psychosis and medications, this is best for, but if somebody's really wanting to heal and get, I think a dieta is one of the most powerful things somebody could do when they have conditions, unsolvables, really want this deep relationship with self and spirit to kind of be the catalyst. You usually see people go ayahuasca first and then dietas for the strong people. But is there a way, because of this fear, because of the intensity of the expanded, to even make it a little more simple and easy, just on pure dieta? And I know you have so much experience, that just kind of speak to somebody who's never done that, may be afraid, somebody of you've navigated to I've done both, to now you have more of a simple and gentler process, if that's the right word to say. Because this type of work, if you are following it, I've seen it change my life, from chronic pain to none, from autoimmune to none, to barely any energy to get out of bed till I can't wait to share and talk and connect with people every single day. I love what I do. And I have a busy family of 4, and I don't slow down too often other than when I take my little retreats like that. So that is what I want people to know is like, I don't want them to be scared, but there are scary stories and things have happened. But I know people that this has radically changed their life when they didn't feel they had other options.
Right. So I think there was a
Many
question
questions in there.
There's a
Gentler,
question in there
easier, like
surrounding
how does somebody do this that's scared? And help
right.
them
So
oversee like what's happening in medicine or dieta that has given you a little more peace and comfort. And again, I don't just anything if somebody's been curious, like I can tell you're a gentle and caring facilitator for sure. What are you seeing on the other side of people just like me that were scared really bad? Even if they had a rough experience, I had a rough experience, but I still knew someone inside. I just like had to navigate it and see the other side of it.
So I'm going to answer that in 2 parts.
Thank you. That was like a 7-part question, so
yeah.
it makes sense.
We're kind of channeling together here. It's all good. On the same wavelength. So specific to ayahuasca, I don't think there's a person alive that has sat with ayahuasca that wasn't absolutely terrified going in. So the fear, I think, is something everybody goes through and a completely normal part of the process. I will say for most people I know that have done multiple ayahuasca ceremonies or worked with it in a longer term way, it's just eventually you build the trust because you may have an extremely difficult and even scary experience in that space, and then the ceremony is over and you come back to grounded reality and you realize, hey, I went through that and I'm okay. There's this trust that gradually builds through experience, and I feel like that trust that is fostered in the ceremony space with ayahuasca is something that translates to the daily life and building this resiliency and this trust in the unfoldment of life and when the unexpected or difficult things come. So that's part 1 of the answer.
Love that. Love it, because I still show up with a reverence, a deep respect every time. And just like you said, on the other side of it, knowing and seeing the beauty and the messages and the truth into it, I was strong and I picked myself back up together and went and put action towards what needed support.
Right. And so the second part of that question, I would say very honestly that ayahuasca is not necessarily for everybody for a multitude of reasons. And so, yes, I found that there are much gentler ways to even do a dieta that doesn't necessarily involve ayahuasca. And so for somebody that, for example, is experiencing a deep dysregulation in their nervous system or, has issues feeling safe from strong unresolved trauma. So in these specific cases, I discovered other plants. So I work with rose really deeply. So not like, the long-stemmed roses that you buy at the grocery store florist, but there are edible wild roses. So wild rose is medicinally, it's a nervine. And so it helps to relax, to open the nervous system, because one issue I've noticed in this modality overall is that if somebody isn't able to feel safe fully in their body and their mind, feeling safe in the environment, feeling safe with an experience of extreme intensity, they're going to block themselves off from the experience. And so, yes, sometimes gentler plants used in this very ceremonial and intentional context of a dieta can serve that purpose of still accessing these deep, shadowy places and bringing in a lot of insight and spiritual connection without, the nervous system and the psyche shutting down in response to the intensity. And so I would say it's a slower and a gentler way of going to the same place.
I love it. So, I'm sure you've seen a lot, and I just want to talk to, the experience of those that prepare, those that follow it, those that go through it. What changes do you see in your average participant that really shows up pre, post, and in Dieta? Not just the Aya ceremonies for those that did it, but into the process. What are common changes that you see?
So are you asking specifically about the work that I do with rose and the other plants? Or
a dieta process. A dieta meaning like the pre, even before I went, there was preparation before.
Right.
From sex to foods to what you consume on TV. And then I've only done with ayahuasca with the dietas. So and I've seen some that really get out of the ceremony, but like don't take the pre, the post, or the afterwards. Do you see a difference in those that are really showing up fully versus like halfway, half committed, but like they're doing work in ceremony? I'm not denying that, but yet the changes don't stick sometimes, or they're right back to the same patterns or beliefs.
Yes.
So what can that look like? How do you know is it just an internal journey again? Where do you as a facilitator kind of guide or prep or find that right balance of supporting people through their own individual processes that are so deep?
So personally for me, and within the context of the work that I have provided, I see dieta and ceremony, really, even just a single ayahuasca ceremony, you know, it's not limited to that 10 days of dieta or that one night of ceremony. It's energetically sort of like this portal that extends well before and well after. And so you could call that time before preparation. And I've noticed a phenomenon of many people that, you know, they put a deposit down for a dieta or an ayahuasca retreat. They make that solid intention that, yes, I am sitting in ceremony, I am undergoing this dieta. And when that decision is made, it's almost like the plant begins to connect without drinking it. And most people will experience a process, for lack of better words, and that time leading up to it where shadow bits are beginning to rise, fear is beginning to rise. And I feel like it's really important that there is some degree of support that is offered in that time to help navigate and understand what is being triggered. The time afterward is, a lot of people will say this is where the real work happens. That yes, the dieta or the ayahuasca ceremony tends to be this very strong and cathartic unfoldment, and you might not quite understand everything that is happening as it is happening. And when you come out of it, then and you're going back to your daily life, the integration is more in, you know, understanding and unpacking what happened in the dieta or the ceremony itself in all of its facets, and identifying when, you know, for example, a toxic belief pattern or a relational pattern might present itself, and identifying that and making the choice in that moment that I am going to act differently this time. I'm going to see this pattern. I am going to apply the teachings I was given in this ceremony and this dieta to actively make a change in this moment when this opportunity is being presented. And so I call it a test, that there is sort of a period of test after doing plant work where you are challenged to maintain the energetic and emotional shifts that came in the ceremony through the way that you are showing up in everyday life. So I call that integration.
Yeah, I call it tests, meaning you're going to see and reveal, and the world's going to give you the opportunity to overcome it with a new lens, you know, many times. I don't want to say for everybody, but yeah, the patterns will show themselves. And did the work you do allow you to choose differently, as you said, I think is a wise way of looking at. And why I asked that question, Angelica, is I've seen some people go all in and get amazing results, or they push it too far because they're too all in. Or they're just not committed enough. And these patterns show up in people. So I guess my question is, what is doing the work? Is somebody going to get a benefit from the plants themselves if they just showed up? What about the restrictions, the salts, the phones, the interference, the ritual itself, the spirits, the maestros? What is it all a big ingredient in the transformation? Is one more than the other? Is there are people that still can see progress even if they're not all there? Like, I don't want to push somebody away that is curious, wants to do there, but yet still has habits ingrained deep into their system that may take time and have process to underwhelm. Some of us high achievers want to be healed overnight, gifted overnight, all of this stuff. But I tried to lean into the process. Like even myself, there are certain things now, 7 years in this journey, I'm finally taking to another level. And when I do a dieta, kind of the foundational stuff is coming back in, but from a different place, a different embodiment, but the basics are still usually pretty present. So what are your opinion is all happening with all these elements?
Right. You know, I write a lot, you know, more in a Substack article kind of context. And I actually wrote about this subject recently of, you know, why there is seemingly so much variance in the results that people experience when they do this work. And so I would say it is a very equal triangle of factors. And so one point of this triangle is the person themselves and the things that you've talked about related to committing fully, showing up fully, how they prepare, how they treat the integration period. This is one factor. The second factor is the plant itself, because yes, the plant will very much do a lot on its own. And so there's between those first 2 points of the triangle of the person receiving and the plant, there needs to be what I would call an alignment there, that the way that the mechanism of that plant, the way that it works, the things that it generally addresses needs to be in alignment with the specific healing that person is seeking. And so that's the first connection. And then the maestro, the facilitator, is the third point. And so that third point of the maestro connects down to the person and the plant. So
Love that.
So the connection between the maestro and the plant down here is a very important factor. It needs to be, a plant that the maestro is extremely connected to, so they can hold that solid foundation for the work to happen. And then the point between the facilitator and the recipient is, another place where alignment is needed. So for example, does this facilitator, does this maestro have a reference point for what this person seeking healing is navigating? Do they have experience with that themselves? Do they have experience helping people with that thing? Are they capable of holding the space needed for what is arising around that healing? And does the recipient trust and feel safe with that person? And so it's like this triangle of all these different facets.
I get it fully.
Yeah, so when all of these different factors are, perfectly alignment, I have seen literal miracles transpire. And I have also seen people where none of that is in alignment and hardly anything happens. So yes, it can be varied, I think, for that reason.
I love that. I have this other analogy. You're going to get to see this is called the health
triangle.
It's called the health transformation triangle. I teach this, but mine is a little bit different. Yours. This is normally the provider, the skills, the education. This is the tools. So this is the biohacking, the peptides, the stem cells, the plant. And up here I have the community, and the coach is the guide right there, because the doctors don't have the time to coach and guide and do all the integration in most of these models. And I have the participant in the middle. But I like yours a lot better, because that makes sense from like they're carrying the medicine in the purpose and that connection. So I love it.
Yeah, I guess in my model, the participant is an active and important part of the equation.
Yeah, I mean, that's where I always bring it back to radical responsibility. Like the analogy most people here have heard is the cavalry's not coming to save you. Like if you're alive and breathing and listening to this right now, you can choose. I know it may seem difficult. Or you feel trapped. Rock bottom is hard. You've been there. I've been there twice. And it takes a lot to pick you sides up. So that's why sometimes the loved ones, the family, friends, a simple call, simple words of inspiration to somebody, pick somebody up when they're at that bottom. We can all use a friend and guidance. But this plant, just like we talked prior to this, we got to build our resilience. We got to learn to honor our capacity, that we are strong and we are resilient. And, these plants are here to guide, teach, build a relationship, but they're another outside thing if you don't do your part. So, that's my encouragement to anybody listening. And Angelica, you've been doing this for many years. You're in the Sacred Valley. What are the next steps where people can reach out to you, learn about Dieta? Can they have a consultation? Can they find and read about you on Substack? Give us some things and like a closing message for anybody that you would recommend that may be stuck or running out of answers.
So I'm going to start with a closing message. There's so many things I could say there, and what is coming in this moment is that, yes, if you're in this place of feeling completely lost and confused and stuck and with a lack of direction of how to navigate, really with plant work, it comes down to your intuition. So read about people doing this work, connect with whatever they are sharing, connect with them personally, and you tune into your body as you are doing this exploration, and you will eventually find something that just feels right, for lack of better words. It feels expansive, it feels comfortable. So, explore it and find where that resonance lies for you personally, because it's a very individual journey. As far as my work in particular, my website is theheartofrose.com. And I have a lot of information on there. My Substack is also the handle at the Heart of Rose, and people can reach out directly from there. I'm on Facebook as it's a little harder. Angelica Cynthia Gordon.
Well, beautiful, Angelica. Thank you for your wisdom, your knowledge, for showing up for yourself and doing the work and continuing to guide other people through a process. So if you're interested, please reach out to Angelica, follow, learn. As you can see, super kind, knowledgeable, personally embodied in this. And, I think you said something very important from what I've learned. To get past this fear stuff that we talk, you need safety and trust and kindness and gentleness. That's like the first level. Like if you don't feel safe, this is going to have a hard time opening, like we talk. So that's at the absolute foundation. And, from following, listening, and tuning, I think it's easy to see Angelica here is a safe human that cares deeply about the work that she does and the people that she serves. So please follow her, reach out. And Angelica, thank you for your time and presence in this show today. Peace. Thank you for listening to this episode of Doctors of Change. If this conversation moved you, inspired you, or expanded of what you believe is possible, share it with another doctor or a leader who's ready to rise. Together, we amplify this movement, and together we transform healthcare, community, and the future of all humanity. Until next time, heal yourself, lead with love, and keep becoming the doctor of change you were born to be.